Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. So, time to see what is making the headlines with the Deputy Editor for Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the Associate Political Editor for the New Statesman, Rachel Cunliffe. Welcome to both of you. So, as ever, let's take a look at the front pages, starting with the Metro. Peace within reach at last is their headline. The Metro leading then on the ceasefire deal reached between Israel and Hamas, which Donald Trump has hailed a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East. The Guardian also leads on the peace agreement and the celebrations amongst Palestinians and Israelis as both parties agreed to the first phase of the deal. The Telegraph's headline simply reads, "We have peace in the Middle East." The FT carries a warning from diplomats that once the hostage release was complete, the bigger challenge would be implementing the second phase of Trump's plan. Front of the Daily Mail also leads on Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan with a statement from Hamas declaring that the war is over. The Mirror shows two images of families from Gaza and from Israel, respectively celebrating the peace deal. Let's take a look at the Jerusalem Post too, displays an outline of Donald Trump's profile filled with a composite picture of all the hostages set to be released. Its headline, "He's bringing them home." And the Express's headline reads, "Trump's peace." Elsewhere in the news, the sister of Madeleine McCann describes her despair at being sent multiple messages from the woman accused of stalking her family. That is on the front page of the Daily Star. And The Sun leads on an exclusive interview with Victoria Beckham following the release of her Netflix documentary. And apparently, David snores. So let's talk more then with Henry and with Rachel. Very good to see you both. Goodness, I mean, most of the newspapers going for celebrations. Should we start with the Guardian? The photograph there in the Gaza Strip. When they finally hear the news, now there's not a ceasefire yet, which is interesting that there's this delay. And we saw at one point the road that leads up through the coast towards Gaza City, people were being held back with artillery shells being fired upon them because they thought they could already go north. They thought they could already go on the move. But, you know, how are you feeling today then, Rachel?
Well, it's interesting because, as you say, we are still waiting for a ceasefire, and after that, we think it's going to be 72 hours or more before the hostages are actually released. So we're actually looking at Monday or Tuesday. Nonetheless, the sense of celebration in Israel and Gaza and actually across the world is really evident. You can see it in the pictures there. Most of the papers, and we'll go through them in a moment, most of the papers either leading with people celebrating or with images of Donald Trump, and I think we'll get to him in a moment and get to the role that America has played in all of this. But 2 years after the devastating attacks of October 7th and 2 years of really atrocious, horrific warfare, I think a lot of people around the world were starting to doubt whether any kind of ceasefire would be possible at all. So even to have this breakthrough, even though we don't really have the details, even though it hasn't quite started yet, you can sense the momentum and you can sense the sense of relief. So a lot of emotions today, even as we wait to figure out exactly what's happening.
Yes, similar sort of scenes, front page of the Financial Times as well. Deal on hostages close, as you said. It looks like probably Monday. Trump hails momentous breakthrough, but also diplomats warn of challenges because this is phase one, very much families phase one, and it is the easiest phase. And we've never got properly to phase two, despite previous ceasefires.
No, I mean, the whole region has a history of having way more pre-dawns than sunrises. And in this case, I think the fascinating thing from the beginning has always been where on earth is the landing zone between Israel and Hamas on a conflict? How do you... And there isn't one, but it turns out you can maybe brute force your way if the world's most powerful man just demands that he gets to be peacemaker strongly enough. But if you read the papers, there's far more detail about what's not in this agreement than what's in it, right? So there's no agreement on who's going to run Gaza. Is Hamas going to disarm? How much of Gaza is going to remain occupied by the IDF? I saw a map online, I don't know if it was true, but that one showed about 50% of Gaza territory perhaps still being...
I think they said 53%.
53%, today. There we go, perfect, 53%. So it means that you've now got like a West Bank situation where a lot of the West Bank is formally occupied by Israel as well. And so it looks like what will probably happen here, because the good thing about this is that once the fighting stops, the momentum kind of goes out of it and everyone has at least an incentive not to start the fighting again. But where this probably ends up is not Donald Trump's, Gaza resort and casino or whatever it was that he wanted to build. It's probably just another, it's probably just another frozen conflict, right? It's another set of lines, militarized lines. Gaza is smaller, but we're no closer to a lasting peace.
Well, let's go to the Metro, the picture there of Donald Trump with his finger up, and talk about him. How much is this down to Donald Trump and what he's done here?
I think what's interesting about the coverage today has been how unanimously, even people who are by no means Trump supporters, including a number of Democratic officials or former officials or diplomats, have acknowledged that this really was only possible because of Donald Trump, and we can talk about why that might be, but essentially his whole, we have to make a deal and I'm going to lose patience with both of you until you're in a room and you sort it out, the risk that he might actually do that, I think the risk that he might actually abandon Netanyahu and withdraw US support from Israel, which is something that no American president you would think would do, I think that has proved a motivating force. If we look at why this deal seems to have been agreed when the one that Joe Biden was trying to agree that was, I think, similar in a lot of ways, wasn't. I think if you think about incentives and you think about motivations and psychology on both sides, if there is a sense that we don't know what America will do, the White House is very unpredictable at the moment, therefore we need to take this very seriously, versus America is a country that follows diplomatic norms and we know exactly what they're going to do, you can see how that might prove a motivating factor.
Yes, and indeed, you can pull the plug on the military spend. You can get increasingly cross that Doha was hit with an Israeli attack that tried to take out Hamas when Qatar is a very important ally to America. And if you look at the Jerusalem Post, it's quite clear in some respects who the Israelis are thanking for this, and it's not their prime minister, is it? It is the US president.
No, well, I mean, again, Netanyahu clearly had no intention of stopping because his military objectives hadn't been met. And in fairness, as we've already said, this deal doesn't, the whole point of the war from Israel's perspective was Hamas is a armed anti-Semitic organisation that wants to wipe out Jews in the Jewish homeland. They should not be in charge of Gaza anymore. We don't know if this deal actually achieves that. But the interesting thing about it is Trump has actually, especially in his first term, his foreign policy stuff was quite good because he's so brutally transactional. So he normalised relations between Morocco and Israel by just unilaterally recognising Moroccan control over a vast amount of disputed territory that's been disputed for about 50 years at this point. The difficulty, however, and I've completely lost my train of thought on this one. Sorry, we're all coming down from post-conference. We're all coming out from post-conference 2. The challenge is what do you do after Trump, right? Because he's had his big moment. He's been hailed as the peacemaker.
But he answered that today in the sense of he's talking to what he called the very rich nations who will help to rebuild. And he's talking about how it's impossible to live in what is left of Gaza. We see pictures of Gaza and nobody disputes that. He genuinely suggesting that effectively this coalition he's created through his unorthodox statesman-like behaviour, the Saudis, all of those people he met after the UN General Assembly, the Muslim majority leaders, that they will put their hands in their pocket and spend the money to try to rebuild Gaza.
But Hamas has already rejected the suggestion of this, I can't remember the exact name of the council, but they've already rejected the idea of anyone else coming in and governing Gaza.
The international board, effectively. Yeah. Well, he says those are the people that we're drumming up the cash in order to get the rebuild. That will be their job.
But if they're giving that cash straight to Hamas, there's no way that this deal will fly from an Israeli perspective.
I don't think that I don't think we have all the full details. Henry's right that we have more detail about what hasn't been agreed than what has. But I believe that what has been agreed is not just the immediate steps. There is some suggestion of what would come next. So presumably, you're absolutely right. There's no way that the Israelis would sign up to anything that had Hamas involvement at all. But quite the makeup of this international peace board, governing peace board, we don't know, but would have representatives on it from other powers in the region that have a huge incentive to make this work for economic reasons, for security reasons, and in terms of their international diplomatic relations. Can I just say that I think this Jerusalem Post front cover is incredibly striking and powerful, and is actually more striking than any of the UK papers, as perhaps you would expect. And it is such a statement there. And obviously some of this is Israel wanting Trump's involvement because he is able to help them, and some of it is probably flattery, but some of it I think is also a realisation that their own government, which is stuck in a very complicated, very tense coalition, and there are all kinds of domestic political forces going on that perhaps what's in Netanyahu's political interest is not necessarily in the interest of the country as a whole. I think it's making a really powerful statement.
Yes, and actually Donald Trump was asked today a little earlier, you know, what would you feel if Netanyahu was deposed? And he just said, look, that's politics, you know, that's his view. He certainly said he's more popular today than 5 days ago as well. The Daily Mirror front page as well, a moment of shared hope. You know, Gaza on one side, Tel Aviv, presumably hostages square on the right-hand side of the page. And that is the point, isn't it? That the pain is deeply rooted in both sides. The double-page spread inside the newspaper, again, united in hope. And this is why it's so important for those in Gaza and those in Israel.
Well, I think it may be short-lived for all the reasons that Henry says and for the reasons that we don't have full details about what is going to be the groundwork for a lasting peace. But just from a human perspective, on the Palestinian side, the sheer numbers being killed daily and the devastation on thousands of individuals and families. And on the Israeli side, I think there's a real sense within Israel that for many, many months, the plight of the hostages and their families got decentered from the conversation.
Who are, you know, possibly under the
ground. Who are under the ground,
this is the tricky part of this.
And that they felt abandoned by Netanyahu, and they felt that he would rather have dead hostages as martyrs and not have to worry about getting them back than have to deal with the thorny realpolitik of returning them. There is has been huge anger and despair in Israel that particular objective got made secondary as the war in Gaza developed. It's a huge celebration now that those 20 or so individuals that we believe are alive will be coming home.
I should just say that in partial defence of Netanyahu, maybe, like, it is British government policy not to negotiate with hostage takers, and you can see from a grand security perspective, the last thing that you want to do. It was a big tension. It's been a tension from the beginning, because the last thing you want to do, if you want to discourage people taking hostages, is pay ransoms, be that monetary, political. So there's always been that tension of, yes, get the hostages back, but also looking after the broader security interests of the Israeli state, and that's always been a tension in the strategy. And so there was obviously all the anger they were talking about, but it's not as if all of the Israeli government's other competing priorities were illegitimate.
OK, both of you stay there. Henry, Rachel, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme, including this story on the front of the Telegraph. The NHS is in a state of emergency, say doctors, as waiting lists soar.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sir Cunliffe wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, the Deputy Editor for Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the Associate Political Editor for the New Statesman, Rachel Cunliffe. The Cabinet meeting is still underway in Israel, and we've just had words from the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Pictures too, actually, have been released with him alongside Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner as well, who are both working on behalf of Donald Trump, clearly, both in Egypt and Sharm el-Sheikh, and now, as you can see, travelling to Israel. Netanyahu has said, we're in the midst of a crucial development. For the past 2 years, we've fought to achieve our war goals, and one of the main goals is the return of the hostages, all of them, the living and the dead, and we are going to do it. We could not have achieved this without the extraordinary assistance of President Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They worked tirelessly together with Ron and his team, our team, these efforts together with the courage of our soldiers who entered Gaza, created combined military and diplomatic pressure that isolated Hamas. I believe that these brought us to this point. Goes on to personally thank them as well on behalf of the people of Israel. So the latest there from Netanyahu with that cabinet meeting still underway. Well, elsewhere in the news, away from Israel and the Gaza war, let us go to, get my list up, the Daily Telegraph, which is that the NHS is in a state of emergency, the paper tells us, Henry.
Yeah, Rachel and I were discussing this one before we came in. Like, were we alive at the last point there wasn't a state of emergency in the NHS? Because it's just the model, essentially. The NHS runs on very, very tiny margins. It's always given just enough money, and now we don't have enough of that. Essentially, Labour government elected, obviously claiming that it was going to end austerity for the NHS. That austerity didn't really happen. In real terms, public spending on the NHS increased. It actually doubled between 2010 and 2024, excluding the COVID spike. But nonetheless, they wanted to spend even more money. But that's not enough, because apparently new data shows that waiting lists are up, A&E waits are up, and that's going to be very disappointing for the government because, of course, they've said that they were spending all of this money. You do have to feel a bit sorry for the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, because, of course, most of the billions that he's been given are revenue budget, which means it's just ongoing costs, you know, maintenance, staff costs, and so on. The actual budget he's got to deliver all of the transformational change he's supposed to be delivering was $6 billion in capital that he was assigned a little while ago. So it's not necessarily a surprise, but this is going to be basically the perennial story of this Parliament, is that essentially you can't give the NHS enough money, and the government doesn't have nearly enough money, and so despite having come in, having promised it would fix things, promised it would make things better, had those big settlements with the unions, it's bad NHS figures. And if there's one thing Labour's supposed to be, you know, the public trusts Labour to get right, is the NHS.
Yes, amid suggestions that they might pay more to pharmaceutical companies to get their drugs, which is something that Donald Trump has been pushing. And slightly Trumpian words reported in The Guardian, as Farage saying that teachers are poisoning our children with Marxism.
Well, it's interesting that you use the word Trumpian there, because where has Nigel Farage given these comments? He has been at a private American Christian college in Michigan, where presumably I guess it's conference recess. He wanted a little break to Michigan while Labour and the Conservatives were off having their party conferences. But I think this is interesting because this shows a difference in the kind of rhetoric that Farage uses, when he is out and about in America speaking on the kind of MAGA Trumpian speaking circuit, using some of these terms like children being poisoned with Marxism by their teachers, whereas back in the UK, he's presenting himself as kind of really not that outside the mainstream, common sense, you know, we're all pretty much with him, aren't we? That's the kind of tone of the rhetoric that he takes here. Obviously, what he says in America can get reported in British newspapers, and that's where we are.
Indeed. So let's go to the Daily Telegraph again, shall we? The peril of the pub and what to do about it. Suggestion of a change in licensing, a refresh, if you like, of the nighttime economy.
Yeah, so the government has announced that it's going to extend opening hours for pubs, which sounds great in theory. Two problems with it. This story...
more music as well and more outside dining.
Yes.
Too, yeah.
In theory. This story is for basically the industry saying this is not going to outweigh the impact of the Chancellor's national insurance hikes, because obviously that's hugely increased the cost of employing people, which is a big thing. The other one is, though, councils control licensing. The government sets the overall rules, but it doesn't mean your local council is going to let something stay open later, so...
That was a good news pub story and you ruined it.
It was a story.
Rachel, Henry, run out of time. Do apologise. See you for more soon. Thank you.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.